Ryan Harper was a decorated police officer, a man who wore his badge with pride, but when his younger sister Emily vanished into the shadows of a ruthless drug gang, everything he believed shattered. What began as loyalty to a family disguised in police uniforms spiraled into a deadly game of betrayal, desperation, and a turf war stretching all the way to Scotland. This is the story of how a good cop became the gang's pawn, and then their fiercest enemy. Detective Ryan Harper was everything a small-town police force could hope for. At just 28, he had already built a reputation for being hard-working, honest, and deeply committed to protecting his community. His family had lived in the county for generations, and Ryan took pride in walking the same streets his father once patrolled. Every day, he put on his uniform with the hope of making a difference, keeping the peace and stopping crime before it could take root. But beneath the surface of the calm, quiet streets, trouble was quietly growing. The county was known for its sleepy charm, where neighbors knew each other and children played safely outside. Yet in the shadows, a growing drug trade was beginning to take hold. It wasn't obvious at first, just whispers and rumors of strangers moving through town, strange cars parked late at night, and young people disappearing into the night. What Ryan didn't realize was how deep the problem had already spread and how close it was to home. One chilly autumn evening, as Ryan finished his patrol shift, he was approached by a group of men who seemed friendly and familiar. They called themselves a family, a tight-knit group that looked out for one another. At first, it felt like an opportunity, a way for Ryan to connect with people who knew the streets better than anyone else, a chance to understand the hidden parts of the county he had yet to see. The men promised loyalty and protection, and slowly, Ryan found himself drawn into their world. What started as casual meetings grew into more frequent encounters. The group introduced Ryan to a lifestyle hidden beneath the surface of his everyday life, a world filled with danger, secrets, and blurred lines. Ryan thought he could control it, that he could keep his hands clean and use this family to keep tabs on the growing drug trade. But the group had other plans. They saw in Ryan a valuable asset, someone who wore the police uniform but could operate outside the law. As Ryan became entangled with the gang, he didn't know that this dangerous relationship would soon pull him into a nightmare from which there was no easy escape, one that would threaten everything he held dear. Ryan's involvement with the group quickly deepened, though he didn't fully understand the consequences at first. The family that had welcomed him wasn't just a group of friends looking out for each other. They were part of a larger, ruthless gang involved in running drugs through county lines. Their operations stretched across towns and cities, using secret routes and young couriers to move illegal drugs far from the police's eyes. The gang was clever, careful, and well organized, and they needed someone on the inside to keep their activities safe. That someone was Ryan. At first, the tasks given to him seemed small and manageable. He was asked to look the other way during certain patrols, or to pass along information about police movements. This made the gang feel safer and helped them avoid getting caught. Ryan told himself that what he was doing wasn't that bad. He was helping to protect his community in his own way, but the truth was much darker. Slowly, the favors escalated, and Ryan found himself transporting drugs while still wearing his police uniform. His badge became a tool for the gang, a way to avoid suspicion at checkpoints and inspections. Every time Ryan crossed those invisible lines, the weight on his conscience grew heavier. He was trapped between his duty as an officer and the growing fear of what might happen if he refused the gang's demands. The family had shown him that loyalty came with consequences, and breaking their trust wasn't an option. They weren't just a group of friends, they were a powerful, dangerous force that controlled much of the county's drug trade. Ryan's uniform made him almost untouchable to outsiders, but inside he was a prisoner. The gang manipulated him with threats and promises, keeping him under their control. His world began to close in, and the man who once dreamed of protecting his community was now helping destroy it. Unaware of how deep he had fallen, Ryan convinced himself he was still in control, but as the drugs moved through county lines, spreading addiction and violence, Ryan's role became impossible to ignore. What started as a way to protect his town had become a trap, one that threatened to pull him down with it. Ryan's world was already fragile when the unthinkable happened. His younger sister, Emily, vanished without a trace. Emily was just 18, full of life and dreams, the light of their family. Her sudden disappearance shook Ryan to his core, ripping apart the fragile balance he had tried to maintain between his job, the gang, and his personal life. The police launched a search, but leads were scarce, and the case quickly went cold. Every day without Emily felt like an unbearable weight pressing on Ryan's chest. Ryan knew something was wrong. Deep down, he feared that Emily's disappearance wasn't random. The gang had warned him before about loyalty and the cost of betrayal. He suspected that Emily had been taken as a warning, a way to keep him in line and stop him from questioning their orders. The thought filled him with dread, but also ignited a fierce determination. If the gang thought they could control him through fear, they had underestimated how far he would go to save his sister. The police treated Emily's case like any other missing persons file, but Ryan saw clues where others didn't. He noticed strange phone calls, unexplained meetings, and the subtle signs of pressure from the family. Every moment without Emily sharpened his resolve to break free from the gang's hold. The man who had once accepted their control now wanted out, but leaving wasn't easy. The gang's grip was tight, and any move against them could put Emily in even greater danger. Ryan found himself living a double nightmare, haunted by the fear for his sister's safety, and trapped in a world he could no longer ignore. His colleagues noticed his increasing distance, the sleepless nights and the way he seemed to carry a secret no one could understand. He couldn't tell them the truth, not yet. The risk was too great. In the silence of his own thoughts, Ryan made a promise to himself. He would find Emily, no matter the cost. But to do that, he would have to fight the very people he once trusted, and risk everything he had left. What followed was a dangerous journey, one that would push Ryan to the edge and beyond. Ryan's life became a constant struggle to keep his two worlds separate. By day, he was the dedicated police officer his community respected, patrolling the streets, responding to calls and investigating crimes. But beneath that calm surface, a darker reality consumed him. By night he was tangled in the gang's web, forced to run drugs and relay information that helped the criminals stay one step ahead of the law. The pressure was suffocating, and Ryan knew he was playing a dangerous game with no easy way out. Balancing his double life took a toll. His colleagues began to notice changes. He became withdrawn, distracted, and often missed important meetings. Rumors started to swirl about his unusual behavior, but Ryan kept everyone at arm's length. He couldn't risk letting anyone get too close. If the gang discovered he was under suspicion, the consequences would be deadly, not just for him, but for his missing sister as well. Fear and guilt twisted inside him, making every decision feel like a trap. Ryan's trust in the family was shattered by the constant manipulation. They didn't care about him as a person, they only wanted to control him. Every favor he did for them came with a price, and the threats against him and Emily became more explicit. The gang's power extended beyond the county's borders, reaching places Ryan had never imagined. The deeper he got, the clearer it became that escape was nearly impossible. Despite the danger, Ryan refused to give up hope. He started gathering evidence quietly, taking small risks to document the gang's operations without alerting his handlers. It was a deadly balancing act. One wrong move could mean the end for Emily, or worse, for himself. Every night, Ryan wrestled with his conscience, haunted by the growing destruction the drug trade brought to his community. Caught between loyalty and desperation, Ryan's world was unraveling. His uniform, once a symbol of justice, now felt like a heavy chain. The man who once believed in protecting others was slowly becoming a prisoner of the very darkness he had sworn to fight. And the question that haunted him most was whether he could find a way out before it was too late. Months passed in a blur of fear and frustration, but then Ryan received something that shattered the fragile silence. a cryptic message hinting that Emily was still alive. The message didn't come directly from the gang but from an unknown source, warning him that she was being held far away in Scotland. This revelation was both a lifeline and a curse. Hope flared inside Ryan, but it was tangled with the terrifying reality that the gang's reach was much larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. Scotland wasn't just a distant place, it was the heart of a powerful criminal network that controlled much of the county line's drug trade. The gang Ryan was caught up with had connections there, running their operations with brutal efficiency. The message made it clear: Emily was being used as a pawn, a tool to keep Ryan under control, far from home and trapped in a nightmare he could barely grasp. Ryan's world, already fragile, now teetered on the edge of collapse. The man who had once believed he could protect his community was forced to face the reality that his sister was caught in the crossfire of a war he barely understood. The distant cities, the underground networks, and the ruthless criminals now felt terrifyingly close. With this new information, Ryan made a choice. He could no longer follow the gang's orders or pretend he was still under their control. He decided to fight back, not just for his sister, but for his own freedom. Quietly, he began collecting evidence, recording conversations, tracking movements, and searching for allies within the police force who might help him. Every step was dangerous. The gang was watching closely, and any sign of betrayal would bring deadly consequences. But Ryan's desperation outweighed his fear. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure was not an option. The mission to find Emily and bring down the gang had begun, setting off a chain reaction that would ignite a violent turf war reaching all the way to Scotland. In that moment, Ryan knew his life had changed forever. What started as a personal fight had become something much larger, one that would expose the darkness hidden beneath the county lines and challenge everything he thought he knew about loyalty, family, and justice. Ryan's decision to fight back marked the beginning of a dangerous and unpredictable battle. The gang quickly sensed something was wrong. Their careful control began to slip as rumors of a mole spread through their ranks. Paranoia grew, and the gang tightened its grip, increasing surveillance on Ryan and those around him. Every move Ryan made was shadowed by fear, fear of discovery, fear for his sister, and fear for his own life. The county, once peaceful, began to unravel. The gang's tightening control sparked violent turf wars between rival groups fighting for control of the drug routes. Streets that had been quiet were now scenes of shootings, beatings, and brutal retribution. Innocent bystanders got caught in the crossfire, and the community Ryan had sworn to protect was falling apart. The police force struggled to keep up, unaware that one of their own was at the center of the storm. Ryan's dual life became impossible to maintain. He was constantly on edge, fearing betrayal from all sides. The gang's enforcers watched him closely, while fellow officers grew suspicious of his erratic behavior. Ryan knew that if he slipped up, it would mean the end for him, and likely Emily. Yet, he couldn't stop now. Every secret meeting, every piece of evidence he collected, was a step closer to exposing the gang's operation. The violence soon spilled beyond the county's borders, dragging in other criminal groups and stretching the conflict into neighboring towns and cities. The county line's drug trade was no longer a local problem, it was a regional crisis. Police forces from different areas found themselves forced into uneasy alliances, but the corruption and fear within the system made cooperation difficult. Spilled beyond the county's borders, dragging in other criminal groups and stretching the conflict into neighboring towns and cities. The county line's drug trade was no longer a local problem, it was a regional crisis. Police forces from different areas found themselves forced into uneasy alliances, but the corruption and fear within the system made cooperation difficult. Ryan's fight was no longer just about saving his sister. It had become a battle for control over a sprawling criminal empire that threatened the safety of countless communities. His actions set off a chain reaction of events, triggering a turf war so fierce it reached all the way to Scotland, where the gang's leaders awaited, ready to defend their empire at any cost. Caught in the middle of this escalating conflict, Ryan realized that the path to freedom and to saving Emily would be longer and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Ryan's investigation led him north to Scotland, a place far from the quiet county he once called home. The landscape was different, harsh, rugged, and cold, but the danger was the same. Here he uncovered a powerful criminal network that controlled the flow of drugs across county lines with brutal efficiency. The gangs he faced in Scotland were ruthless, their methods violent and their loyalty fragile. They operated like a dark family, bound by fear and blood, with Emily caught somewhere deep inside their world. As Ryan dug deeper, he realized that Emily was more than just a hostage. She was being used as leverage to keep him silent and compliant. The gang's leaders made it clear that any attempt to rescue her without their approval would have deadly consequences. The stakes were higher than ever, and the distance between him and Emily felt unbearable. Scotland wasn't just a new location, it was a fortress guarded by criminals who had no mercy. The local gangs eyed Ryan with suspicion. To them, he was an outsider, a threat who had come looking for trouble. His presence sparked fear and uncertainty, unsettling the fragile balance of power. Ryan knew that every move had to be calculated carefully. One wrong step could destroy any chance of saving his sister. Yet, despite the danger, he found unexpected allies, former gang members and honest officers, tired of the violence and corruption. These unlikely partnerships gave him hope, but trust was hard to come by. In the shadows of Scotland's cities and remote towns, Ryan pieced together a map of the gang's operations. He discovered secret hideouts, drug routes, and brutal enforcers who answered only to the highest leaders. Every clue brought him closer to Emily, but also deeper into a world where loyalty was bought with blood and betrayal was the norm. Ryan's journey north was more than a rescue mission. It was a confrontation with the darkest parts of the criminal underworld and a test of his own strength and resolve. The fight to save Emily had become a fight for his own survival, and the final battle was drawing near. Time was running out, and Ryan knew that rescuing Emily would require careful planning and allies he could trust. The gang's hold on Scotland was strong, and their leaders were ruthless. Ryan reached out quietly to a few trusted colleagues within the police force, officers who had grown frustrated with corruption and the endless cycle of violence. He also connected with former gang members who had escaped that life and wanted to help bring down the criminal empire. Together they formed an uneasy alliance, united by a shared desire to end the suffering. The rescue plan was risky and complicated. Ryan and his new allies gathered intelligence, mapping the gang's strongholds and routines. Every detail mattered: the timing of patrols, the location of guards, and the escape routes. They knew the gang would be watching closely, ready to strike at the first sign of betrayal. The mission would take them deep into enemy territory, where failure meant not just losing Emily, but possibly their own lives. Ryan struggled with the weight of responsibility. He was not just risking himself, but everyone who had joined his cause. The gang had already proven how brutal and merciless they could be. Still, Ryan's determination burned stronger than ever. This was more than a mission. It was a chance to reclaim his life and save his sister from a fate worse than death. As the day of the operation approached, tension mounted. Ryan prepared mentally and physically, knowing that every second would count. The plan was simple but dangerous: move in swiftly, rescue Emily, and escape before the gang could react. But simplicity in such a violent world was often an illusion. The night of the rescue was filled with silence and danger. Ryan and his team moved like shadows, relying on their careful preparation and trust in each other. The enemy was close, but Ryan's hope was stronger. This was the moment that would decide everything, the moment to face the darkness head-on, and fight for the chance to bring Emily home. What happened next would change Ryan's life forever, and set the stage for a final showdown that no one would forget. The night of the rescue was tense from the very beginning. Ryan and his team moved cautiously through the cold, shadowed streets of the gang's territory, every step calculated to avoid detection. The warehouse where Emily was held loomed ahead, a grim fortress surrounded by armed guards and harsh lights. Ryan's heart pounded, but he forced himself to focus. There was no room for fear or mistakes. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with danger. The gang's enforcers were alert, ready to respond at the first sign of trouble. Ryan's team had planned their approach carefully, but nothing could prepare them for the brutal resistance they faced. Shots rang out, echoing through the empty building as the rescue turned into a fierce and chaotic battle. Ryan fought with everything he had, driven by the desperate hope of saving his sister. Amid the gunfire and shouting, the true leaders of the drug network revealed themselves: cold, calculating figures who controlled the entire operation from the shadows. They had used Emily as a weapon, and now they faced the consequences of underestimating Ryan's determination. The final showdown wasn't just physical, it was a battle of wills and strategy, forcing Ryan to confront the darkest parts of his own soul. In the chaos, Ryan found Emily, scared but alive. The sight of her was both a relief and a reminder of everything that had been lost. But their escape was far from guaranteed. The gang's reinforcements closed in, and Ryan's team was stretched thin. Betrayals surfaced, revealing that not everyone could be trusted. The line between friend and foe blurred in the heat of the fight. Despite the danger, Ryan held on to his purpose. Every moment counted as they fought their way out, pushing through pain and exhaustion. The warehouse became a battleground for freedom, a place where Ryan's courage and sacrifice were tested to the limit. When they finally escaped into the night, it was clear that the war wasn't over. The gang's empire had been shaken, but the fight for justice and for survival would continue. For Ryan, the rescue was only the beginning of a long, uncertain road ahead. Emily's rescue marked the end of one nightmare, but the beginning of another. The gang's empire had been dealt a heavy blow, but their influence didn't disappear overnight. The violent turf war that Ryan's actions had ignited spread like wildfire, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and shattered communities. Rival gangs fought viciously to fill the power vacuum, and law enforcement struggled to contain the chaos. Corruption lingered in some corners, making the fight for justice far from straightforward. Ryan's own life was forever changed. His career in the police force was effectively over. He was no longer trusted by many colleagues, and his involvement with the gang, even under duress, stained his reputation. Yet despite the loss of his badge and the weight of his past mistakes, Ryan found a measure of peace in finally exposing the truth. He became determined to use his experience to help others caught in similar traps, speaking out about the dangers of county lines, drug trafficking, and the manipulation of those sworn to protect. The scars from the ordeal ran deep. Emily, though safe, carried her own trauma from the months she spent in captivity. Their family, once close-knit and hopeful, struggled to heal from the damage caused by secrets and betrayal. Ryan often wondered how many others were still suffering in silence. How many families had been torn apart by the same hidden forces. The county lines war had revealed a harsh reality. Evil often wears familiar faces, and sometimes those sworn to protect are the ones most easily corrupted. Ryan's story became a warning, a reminder that even the strongest can be broken and that the fight against crime requires vigilance, courage, and humanity. In the quiet moments, Ryan reflected on the cost of loyalty and the meaning of family. He knew the battle was far from over, but he was ready to face whatever came next. For him, the path forward was clear. Protect those who couldn't protect themselves, expose the darkness, and never forget the sister who had saved him in ways no one else could. The war might rage on, but Ryan's fight was only just beginning.